If you read some children's books, you get the impression that George Washington was the greatest military leader of all time. But if you actually look at his military record, he engaged in 17 battles in his lifetime and won 4 and lost 13. And some of his 13 losses were due to his own lack of ability as a general. He eventually learned how to be general. Across the ocean, there was another general named Napoleon who won more than 40 victories and lost about 3. But there's a difference between Washington and Napoleon. Washington won his last battle. Napoleon lost his last. Huge difference. Anyway, Washington became America's hero, became America's first president, and is somewhat elevated on a pedestal. Later, we put Abraham Lincoln beside of him. Again, these men were called the Founding Fathers. All right, the American Revolution was over. Then the nation had to form its own government. The first attempt at government was called the Articles of Confederation. It lasted 10 years after the war. And it did not work. The Articles of Confederation they were replaced by the the United States Constitution, which was adopted and which we have used ever since. Now, when the Constitution was set up, it was set up with a Bill of Rights. And initially, it did not have a Bill of Rights. The Bill of Rights are the first 10 amendments to the Constitution, and they guarantee rights of free speech, freedom of religion, that no Army general can come into your home and say, you keep my troops in your home. This can't happen, no quartering troops. It also gives us the right to bear arms. Again, if this were an American history class, we would talk about the Constitution for a whole period, or maybe half of a period, and talk about the separation of powers. The president is elected for 4 years. He can be re-elected. The president must be at least 35 years old. The vice president also must be 35 years old. The members of the House must be 26, I believe. The senators shall be 32 years old. Again, we want generally more mature men. In those days, it was men. Today, we allow women to be president, women to serve in Congress, but even they must be the proper age. The representative must be at least 26. Senators must be at least 32. Presidents, vice president must be at least 35. I want to say this, folks, about freedom of speech. I am not sure there is any freedom of speech in this world. Your speech will determine whether or not you have friends, whether or not you ever get married, or whether you stay married once you are married. Bad speech, your speech determines whether you can get elected to a political office or whether you don't. Will determine whether you get a job or keep a job once you get a job. You have to learn how to speak wisely. You can't just go around babbling like it does and expect people to respect you. You have to exercise, again, what's supposedly a right, freedom of speech. You have to exercise your rights with a whole lot of caution, a whole lot of care, because your speech will get you in trouble fast. And believe me, there are many things I have said that I later wished I could call back and unsay. Once it's out of your mouth and in the hearing of someone else, it's sometimes difficult to unsay what has been said. All right. Before I proceed, anybody have any comments about the United States? The Revolutionary War lasted some like 6 years. It lasted 8 years, but the fighting only lasted 6. The last battle occurred in 1781. Peace treaty that ended it occurred in 1783. When the British Army, half the British Army was sent home in defeat, the people of Britain said enough and told their king, we're not going to fight anymore. The colonies did not really whip Great Britain. They just kept on fighting so long the British got tired of fighting and said, we just can't fight this anymore, we can't win, let's quit. Well, they did win the Battle of Yorktown. I mean, the British could have sent another army to replace the one they lost at Yorktown, but the people of Britain said, no, enough. Besides, like I say, they were already filled up to the neck with wars anyway. All right, we'll move on. Global conflict. Starting off with Prussia. Now, where this is to lead in the case of Prussia, again, you might say, I haven't seen Prussia on a map. Prussia is today what is known as Germany. But even at this time, a Prussian ruler named Frederick the Great he was building up an army, and he had his army to be, his army was going to be the best in Europe. His troops were equipped with the best rifles then known, the best make then available. And he updated his artillery fairly heavily, and his troops are well dressed and well housed and very highly trained. And his army consists of a standing army of 200,000 men. To support this army, he created a bureaucracy, and he watched over the bureaucracy. Now, the word bureaucracy here means like a hierarchy of authority. You have the bottom of it, and they join together into the next rank, and then they join ranks together to make the next rank. And they eventually join ranks at the top. The levels of authority looks like a pyramid. Bureaucracy, you have the people at the very top, then people below them, and then people below them at different levels. The purpose of the civilian bureaucracy was to collect money to support the military bureaucracy. Now, where this was to lead, folk, it was to lead to Germany believing they were the master race, the best people in the world, and fighting and losing 2 world wars before they realized, whoops, we have to be joining in the race. Again, a lot of Americans who visited Europe said that they never saw anything in Europe that impressed them until they came to Germany. And then in Germany, the people tended to be dressed better, and the houses were better looking, and the roads were straighter, and things just simply were better in Germany or anywhere else, and the Germans noticed it. Frederick invited the philosopher Voltaire to his court. Again, Voltaire, who we've already talked about. And Voltaire advised Frederick. Frederick then he was the most educated monarch in Europe. He made some reforms, including he outlawed the use of torture, except for treason and murder. He granted freedom of speech and press. He granted complete religious toleration. But other than that, he didn't make very many other reforms. Now, of course, one reason, another earlier version of this book said he had no problem granting religious toleration because he was not a very religious man himself. But he allowed Catholic and Protestant and Quaker and Mennonite and Moravian. I mean, he allowed all of them freedom to join any church they chose. But that was it. He did not abolish serfdom. All right. I'm running out of anyway.